Here's a quick question I hear more and more. Are we in a simulation? At first I thought someone was joking or that someone had seen The Matrix one too many times, but now more and more high-profile figures are starting to hop on the bandwagon of this theory. Granted, some of them have their own on-again, off-again relationship with reality, but even people whom I respect intellectually are starting to admit that it's more than just a little plausible.
Stephen Hawking expressed support for the idea before he passed. Famous skeptic Richard Dawkins admitted that the idea makes logical sense. Neil deGrasse Tyson gave it better than 50-50 odds.
I guess it does feel like we've lost the plot of reality for the past year or so. Okay, couple of years. Okay, like 5 or 6 years, but does that mean we're essentially living in some kind of giant computer game? And if so, why on Earth, or any planet, would someone want to create something like that?
The contemporary version of this idea comes from a 2003 paper written by Oxford professor Nick Bostrom, and it starts by making a few observations. Half a century ago, the most advanced game on the planet was Pong, and computers were still too huge to fit on top of a desk. Now, we're able to render fully immersive and photoreal environments, and now everyone's running around with a globally connected mini supercomputer in their pockets. At this rate, it can only be a few decades before we have the technology to fully simulate intelligent beings, or even entire worlds. And if it's possible to digitally simulate one being or one world, it wouldn't make sense for us to do it just once. When we run digital models for whatever reason, be it to make data-driven predictions or just for funsies, we run them many times over. To make things even trickier, there would be no way for a simulated being to tell that they are in a simulation. And this is where we get the theory championed by Elon Musk and co. If the vast majority of beings to ever exist are simulated, and there's no way for them to know the difference, then the odds are overwhelmingly in favor of the conclusion that we are in a simulation.
The odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
And this hypothesis gets all the more freaky when you start examining a lot of the weird quirks of our reality.
While this may sound like a revolutionary new concept, it's actually a lot older than you think. The concept dates back to a 17th century philosopher named René Descartes. He's actually where we get the saying, "I think, therefore I am." But lots of people over the years have posited different versions of the same idea. If we only perceive reality through our senses, what's to say that we can tell the difference between objective reality and a vision or a dream or a simulation or whatever that successfully fools all of our senses?
It's a really fun thought experiment that really makes you stop and think about the limits of your flawed human perception and your limited perspective of the world around you. But the argument also hits a number of roadblocks when you attempt to put it into practice. First, it would be impossible to simulate an entire universe. To simulate every particle of a universe, you would need the matter from an almost infinite number of other universes just to process all that information. But you don't necessarily need to simulate a whole universe, just enough to fool all the beings inside of it. Except the human mind is an incredibly complex thing in and of itself. We actually still don't know what consciousness is. But if we assume that we can create it by simulating the activity of a brain, then we would need a machine capable of processing 100 million billion operations per second. That means that you would need a supercomputer 100 times faster than the most advanced ones that we have right now, just to simulate one brain.
Now multiply that out by the 10 or so billion humans living on Earth, keeping in mind that the population is still growing. Then think about all the processing power it would take to render a photorealistic enough environment to hold all of us, analyze our reactions, and respond accordingly. You're looking at a supercomputer the size of a solar system just to carry out the one task of simulating humanity, and even then, you haven't solved the most difficult question of all. Why? What benefit could possibly justify marshaling together all those resources to build such a machine? But the really tricky part about this theory is that you can't ever disprove it scientifically because it's not a scientific theory, it's a philosophical one. It'd be like trying to scientifically disprove the existence of God. Even if you come up with compelling proof, who's to say it wasn't put there by God to throw off your scent? Same could be said about the creators of our mysterious simulations, so rather than attempt proof, I'll just ask, which of these scenarios is more likely?
Could it be that a super advanced civilization, be it alien or a future version of us, pooled together resources that we can barely start to imagine just to create an artificial world for us for reasons that we can't yet begin to comprehend? Or is it more likely that people are looking at the terrifying state of today's world and inventing a new tech bro version of the mysterious, invisible creator living in the clouds. One that conveniently lets us off the hook for all the damage that we've done to this planet because, oh, well, it's all fake anyway. And even if that first scenario turns out to be true, what possible downside is there to treating our reality like it's the only one that we will ever get? Because if we end up ruining things in this reality, why on earth would the creator or creators of this reality want to keep us around? Feel free to chew on those questions for a bit while you continue to watch this.